All right, today I'm going to be talking about income inequality because it's something I've always enjoyed talking about on this channel. And without further ado, let's get right into our first talking points. In the land of opportunity where dreams are supposed to come true, a troubling reality lurks beneath the surface. America, the richest nation on earth, is also home to millions struggling to make ends meet. But why? But why? The reason is simple, is that the amount of resources that we have in our society are being gobbled up by a very small percentage of people that can afford to do that. I'll be talking about one of the most pressing issues of our time, income inequality and its devastating impact on poverty in the United States. The gap between the rich and the poor in America is widening at an alarming rate. Today, the top 10% of earners take home more than 13 times the income of those at the bottom 10%. This isn't just a statistic, it's an untold story behind why so many Americans remain trapped in poverty despite the country's immense wealth. There is no immense wealth at the bottom, just like there was never a economic boom for the bottom 20%. The people that are doing well because they own homes, they have stock, they have good jobs, they have everything that the proletariat doesn't have. And so when you listen to the mainstream media and they talk about people at the bottom, they're referencing people who don't have a voice, who don't matter, and who have been left behind on purpose. I'm going to call it millions of homeless people in this country because it's not a few hundred thousand. There are miles of people living in RVs and in their cars all along roads in California, the National Guard should have been called out a long time ago because this is a natural disaster on a biblical proportion that no one seems to care because it involves people that we've already thrown away. When you look at a homeless encampment, those are all people that still need jobs. They still need homes. They still need all of the normal things that every other person needs, but they will never get them. We live in a society that prioritizes tax cuts for the rich over finding some way of stopping the spending on things we don't need. Things like space exploration, things like the military, things like investigations into problems that don't matter, cutting the education system, cutting higher learning to an extent, getting rid of government funding for rich institutions. My coworker said it today that the rich that want to go to Ivy League schools, let them, but pay for it yourself. Regular school for regular people isn't really a thing anymore. I mean, this country doesn't need the liberal arts, and it never has for poor people. There were a lot of things this country doesn't need to include poor people in, and that's education that doesn't lead to jobs. Because as a poor person myself, and knowing this now, and I didn't know it before, is that my education was never going to take me anywhere. And there are millions upon millions of people that thought education was job training and found out afterwards, once I was working at Walmart after college, that I didn't need to go to college to work at Walmart. Did I need to go to college to work at the call center where I work after Walmart? No. Did I need to any education for my current job? Absolutely not. All my education and the waste of time that I thought that education was going to take me somewhere, it didn't. And for the vast majority of people who average intelligence, going to college and wasting money on something that's not going to make you rich is stupid. What can poor people do in order to bypass a system that is dead set against them? Absolutely nothing. We know that working hard at the bottom doesn't lead anywhere. You know you don't have the right connections. Obviously, you can't afford education. The only thing the proletariat can do is continue to buy lottery tickets. I hate to say it to you, but unfortunately, many people don't understand what a university's for. A university was a privileged place for rich and elite people. Not for me. I'm not rich. I'm not privileged. I got sold a line when it came to education, and so does everyone else that's going to school right now. It's not going to lead anywhere unless you already have the right connections. So you're wasting your time going to school. And again, I'm saying this to a version of myself that somehow, if there was a time machine that I could get into right now and go talk to my younger self, I would tell myself to avoid college like the plague. It isn't worth it. And they don't tell you at admissions that this could lead nowhere. Because guess what that means? If you're selling people a golden ticket towards something that doesn't exist, your customers aren't going to show up. In fact, I had this conversation with a high school teacher yesterday. She said, at my public school, we're supposed to call the children scholars. And she laughed at that because I took it one level worse. And I think students at any school in this country should be called customers because that's what you are. You're not a scholar. You're not a student. You're a customer first. And that's how we should hold these businesses to the sniff test because right now education doesn't pass it. I don't care what you're doing right now. Education isn't passing the sniff test. It's a business disguised as a school. And again, I work at one of these places. I'm telling you from experience. Today and for the past 5 days, I've had to listen to my new employee struggle with eating. I'm not kidding you. This kid goes home at lunch to make bologna sandwiches that he shares with his pet because he's that broke. And work isn't worth it anymore. When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, work isn't worth it anymore because it doesn't help you solve your problems. In fact, work creates more mental health problems than it helps. In a country with this much wealth, you would think that someone would get it up there, right? Someone in the government, some rich philanthropist would realize, oh my God, look what we're doing to poor people. We're forcing them to figure out how they're going to give up their lives for food and rent, and then laugh at them and call them losers because they have to do this in order to survive. I don't think that where I'm at in life I'm surviving. I'm going in the opposite direction every single day. Talking point number two. Decades ago, the American dream was built on the promise of upward mobility. Hard work and determination could lift anyone out of poverty, but today that dream is slipping away for millions. What's changed? Upward mobility doesn't exist. Let's face it. Go look on Indeed right now for a regular job that requires no college, finished high school, and you find me upward mobility. I'm seeing people in their 30s, late 20s, even into their 40s, living with their parents while they work because there is no upward mobility. Success, again, in my opinion, is a birthright. You're either born to the right successful family, neighborhood, and connections, or you're not. And in our present day, failure has been normalized. We don't like it because you should be ashamed of yourself if you're not rich. This is the message that I get every single day that I leave my cell block B apartment for the work release program and go out there into the world. I'm ashamed of where I work. I'm ashamed of how much money I make. I'm ashamed that I've been single my whole life. I'm ashamed that even Susie Rottencrotch points at me and thinks I'm a loser. That's Susie. When Susie Rottencrotch can look at you and be like, once you start making $650,000, I'll think about giving you the old in and out. But until then, this isn't for you. And so Johnny Sixpack has to go home and shake hands with the governor morning, noon, and night because he has nothing else to do. The thing between his legs has become a liability to him. That thing wants the things that money can buy. It wants a hot wife and a big house and a fancy car, but guess what? You're not getting any of those things. In my opinion, there should be a vending machine that you can walk up to as a male and just take care of it, like a weed, where a little razor blade thing comes out and gets rid of it, puts a giant band aid over the spot, gives you a straw to pee out of, and you're all set. You move on with your life. Instead, the thing has to constantly be reminding us of how big of a loser we are. Talking point number 3. This growing divide has far reaching consequences. It's not just about money, it's about access to education, healthcare, housing, and even basic necessities. When the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, the entire fabric of society begins to unravel. Access is everything. And that's what being born rich gives you. You have access to the best schools, the best tutors, the best private K through 12. You have access to the things that are going to make you successful. And then you wonder, you look across this country and why are all the places that suck in this country in the South? Because they have the least amount of access of everything. The healthcare for poor people is disturbing. We might as well not even have any. And even for people like me, healthcare is so expensive we don't use it. We have to pay for it because it's a requirement to be a human being that you have insurance, just like a car, but we don't use it because we don't have the time and we can't afford it. And therefore, it's a service. It's like paying for Netflix and never turning it on, but the government says you have to have it because otherwise you might be, taking your neighbor's wife, for instance, if you were that bored. It's a way of controlling people's minds. If people don't have anything to do when they go home, they're going to start finding other ways of entertaining themselves, and that's the whole point. The distraction of America is constantly keeping people not looking over there where everything is falling apart. They have a terrible job, no relationship, no future, no career. Don't look at that. Go home and watch Netflix. It'll make you feel better about your crappy life. Turn on the TV and watch some Pro Ball. Or like me, I'm dying to get a Pro beer into my system right now. Like you guys, I'm jonesing for some alcohol right now because I want to be drunk. And again, what's the last thing that poor people don't have access to is housing. Just go look at the underpass over any freeway in America and you're going to find homeless people everywhere. Every direction you go. This Gen Z kid that I hired, he's from another state, and he's like, Millennials team, you don't really have homeless people. Go to Washington, go to Oregon, go to California. You want to see homeless people? That's where it's really bad. And to me, I don't think I've ever gone an entire day of my entire life without seeing homeless people. They become so normalized that we see them almost as stray animals. And they need housing. People who don't make a lot of money need safe housing. No one wants to live in the projects. No one. But guess what? And that's where poor people have to live. It's either that or live on the street. And living in the projects is a horrible way to live. I've never had to live in the projects, but when I was in middle school, my middle school was right across the street from the projects, and it was a horrible place to be at. But with that said, let's get into my next talking point here. All right, so here we are at our final talking point. The rungs of the ladder are getting further apart, making it nearly impossible for those at the bottom to rise. The result is society where poverty persists not because people aren't trying, but because the system is stacked against them. Something that I've been saying on this channel for 4 years is the system has always been stacked against you. The ladder was pulled up 40 years ago by the boomers. They took everything and they left the scraps at the bottom, and then they want you to try to figure out how you're going to survive on the scraps. There's no upward mobility. And it's obvious because more people aren't being successful. The standard person, the average person, the proletariat, isn't doing great, and they haven't been for decades. Persistence where it's allowed, persistence of poor people, just, I think persistence really comes down to not putting the poor just out of their misery. We need them to continue to go to work. We need the proletariat to be miserable enough to go to the jobs that they don't want to. That's how I've always felt my entire life. You need the proletariat working and working and working for next to nothing. That's what the proletariat is. It's a giant pool of widgets that all work in unison to build wealth while they themselves are being sacrificed, while the widget gets completely and totally destroyed by turning inside of those gears. They don't care once your arms and legs stop working. They don't care that you've reached a certain point in your life where you can't continue to work. They don't care that you don't have any retirement. They don't care that you don't never take any sick time. You're working nights and weekends. Your schedule's awful. Your job pays you nothing. The management treats you like you're a piece of garbage, like a stain on their clothes. It's all disrespectful and all intentional because people aren't trying. This is what I hear from management all the time. Today when I got brought yet another Happy Meal toy to my desk to thank me for doing my own job, I thought this is really what they think of me. That somehow I can use my Happy Meal toys in order to buy food, pay my rent, pay for my credit cards, buy a new pair of shoes. The whole idea of treating people in the workplace like children, paying them like children, treating them like children, it disgusts me. Honestly, they're trying to bring back child labor in this country. No, they've just turned adults into child labor. Anyone who's making the minimum wage is considered child labor in this country. Because if it weren't treated that way, it would have a family wage. We would get rid of the disgusting phrase, the minimum wage, and just replace it with something more meaningful. The minimum wage to me, I get teenager vibes, kids in high school, kids washing cars, kids mowing lawns. But adults need to act their wage. And acting your wage means a living wage. Nothing else. There's no negotiation on this. There's living wages and then there's slave wages. That's all there is in this country. And these officials, these rich people, the system definitely caters a system where there's only slave wages. They want people to be NPCs. People aren't people anymore. They're just NPCs. And they look at you with the disgust in their eyes that you would show up to do that job. That's what they amuses the rich, is that people continue to show up because there's no other kinds of work. When I look at my new employees' work history, it's all retail, it's all food, and it's all warehouse. That's it. There's nothing else in his background. And you kind of just look at him, it's like, and you have a liberal arts degree? Yep. Well, that's all you get. So moving on to toxic positivity. So, and again, I'm going to use my new employee as a reference for toxic positivity because it's the same script. Every day that he's come to work, he has the same gripe. He has the same problems. He has an attitude towards life that I can't, I can't condemn him for that attitude because he's lived a bad life. This is definitely a person who doesn't come from money. This is the person who understands that this job is a desperation job. And this is a person that understands that there's no career at this company. No one. In fact, I was having that discussion with the software guy today because he keeps showing up in my office for no good reason. And there's no place for anyone that works around us to go to. It's just a job. You show up, they give you a couple of fish heads, they toss in a McDonald's toy in your Happy Meal, and you put the fries in the bag, little bro. That's all there is. And for tens of millions, if not all of the proletariat, this is our lives just on repeat. It's the same script every single day. You show up, the work is boring, the work is mundane, and you just put your body through the paces. Oh, it's lunchtime now. Oh, it's time for me to say something funny at the water cooler. Oh, it's time for me to put my filter on and not say things that are politically incorrect under the snowflakes that I work with. That's just really it. That's our lives in a nutshell. And it's not going to change ever until the proletariat realizes that they can't live like this anymore. They're not alive. If you're living for food and shelter, you're not alive anymore. You never have been. You've always been the NPC that you were born to be. And hopefully the man wants you to find Susie behind that Taco Bell and ensure that there are plenty of NPCs for generations to come.